On today's episode, I'll be continuing my Christmas movie month by talking about the Netflix animated movie Klaus.
If you're looking for a man with no plans or programs, and he always needs a chance to hold hands for romance, or you're looking for the loot with an old man or cold hands, it's a creature of the night who heads for his spotlight. I'm here to welcome you to Landed and Random Reviews. No method when I choose. It's Brandon and Random Reviews.
All right, everyone, welcome to Brandon at Random Reviews, covering one unsystematically chosen topic at a time. If you like listening to a guy recap and review movies in weekly episodes, then look no further. To keep up with the newest content, you can find Brandon at Random Reviews on most major video and audio platforms, as well as all popular social media sites. If you enjoy this, please like and subscribe. I use listener engagement as a method to boost my number of letter deliveries in the bizarre Scandinavian town where I recently became a postman. So as I mentioned, today's movie is Klaus, released on November 15th, 2019, with a runtime of 96 minutes. This movie is rated PG by the Motion Picture Association of America. Budget, $40 million. Directed by Sergio Pablos. He also did a couple of Disney features in the 90s, I think Hunchback of Notre Dame, something like that. For the writers, Sergio Pablos, Jim Mahoney, and Zach Lewis. And for the composer, Alfonso G. Aguilar. He did the score for the movie. For the cast, we have Jason Schwartzman, who plays Jesper. He was in Rushmore, which was an early Wes Anderson movie. Pretty solid. It had Bill Murray in it. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember finding it particularly amusing. He was in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. He was one of the 7 evil exes, and he was really good in it. He was this master manipulator type. He was not a good guy, and he was generally very well done in the role, I would say. And he was also in a movie called Megalopolis, which is a Francis Ford Coppola movie that came out within the last couple of years, I want to say. I never saw it. I really heard some bad things about it. I didn't hear much good. There are always random stragglers in the comment sections that are like, oh, I like this movie. I don't really know why everybody's talking so bad about it. And it's usually like legitimately awful. Then we have J.K. Simmons, who plays Klaus, and he was in the Spider-Man Raimi trilogy, so the first 3 with Tobey Maguire, and he also ended up coming back into the role in the later Tom Holland movies. And honestly, he is a perfect J. Jonah Jameson. He is wonderful, very enjoyable, very likable in that role. He was in Whiplash, which is a fucking intense movie about drumming with Miles Teller. I really enjoy it. It's not for the faint of heart. It is anxiety-ridden. It is a lot to watch, but it is a very enjoyable movie. And he was also in a movie called Extract, which is a Mike Judge movie that is kind of like an unsung, underrated type comedy for me. Like, I really fucking enjoy Extract, and it's really funny to me, but it's also not one I ever hear anybody talking about. And I don't know if it's because people haven't seen or heard of it, or if they just don't think it's as good as I do. Rashida Jones plays Alva, and she was in, of course, Parks and Recreation as Ann Perkins, and I love her in that show. She's very attractive, honestly. Like, I mean, let's be real here. She's really good looking. She was also in I Love You Man with Paul Rudd and Jason Segel, and she's a supporting character. She's not like a lead character in that either, and she's really enjoyable in it, but she is... unfortunately, I will say that she does seem like she could have been like a plug and play of any actress. Like, it didn't have to be her in that movie for it to be good, but I still enjoy her very much in it. And she was also in The Office. That was where I really started to see her like in a more prominent role. I think she was on Freaks and Geeks. She was like a bully girl in an episode. And honestly, like I can't tell you how many different things I've seen her in, but she has been in a lot of stuff. Then we have Joan Cusack, who plays Mrs. Crumb. She was in Toy Story 2 and then the subsequent Toy Story movies following that. She was Jessie, the cowgirl. Basically, she was the female character on the show that Woody was originally on, all of that stuff that he was a toy for, I should say. She was in High Fidelity. She's actually in a lot of her brother John Cusack's movies, and that one is pretty prominent. It was one of her like bigger early roles that she has a very distinctive voice, and she was also in The Addams Family Values, and I haven't seen that movie since it came out on VHS in the 90s, so forgive me for not really remembering much of it. I know a lot of people really love those movies. Then we have Will Sasso, who plays Mr. Ellingbo, and he was on Mad TV for quite a long time. He was one of the better cast members on Mad TV, had a lot of memorable characters. I used to watch Mad TV quite a bit. He was in Happy Gilmore. He was one of the guys that basically, he was like a mover in that movie, and he was basically dicking around, hitting golf balls, and basically like was one of the integral characters in introducing Happy Gilmore to golf in that movie, so that's kind of cool. And he was also in The Three Stooges, which was a much more recent reboot, reinterpretation of The Three Stooges. I never saw it. I'm not a huge Three Stooges fan. I don't hate them. I just don't seek them out. And then last but not least, we have the late, great Norm Macdonald in his final film role. And he plays the character Mogans. And of course, he's great. I mean, I fucking love Norm Macdonald. He has great stand-up. He has just all of these hilarious talk show appearances where he is just being the funniest guy in a room full of very funny people. He's just got this really bizarre sense of humor, and it's just really fucking great. He was in a movie that he starred in called Dirty Work, and that one is kind of an underrated one. I don't think a lot of people gave a shit about that movie when it came out. I remember seeing it as a kid and thinking it was funny. I'm not trying to act like I'm some fucking Norm Macdonald hipster or something, like I liked him before everybody else did or something, but I really enjoyed Dirty Work. And he was also in Billy Madison in a small role. He was one of Billy's burnout drunk friends that was just always dicking around and hanging out at Billy Madison's house, basically. For casting notes, there are no casting notes. For the plot synopsis, I wrote this one myself, and I'm not entirely sure because it is lengthy, but a postmaster sends his son to a cold and remote location fraught with angry and feuding citizens to teach him a lesson about his entitled behavior by tasking him with getting their mail delivery service running, and the son befriends a mysterious toy maker there. Like I said, very lengthy, a lot to be included. For as simple of a movie as this really is, I wanted to kind of include a lot of stuff. For the tagline, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done. So I saw this tagline on Letterboxd when I was looking up ratings, and it just said, "Welcome to the jingle." And I thought that was really amusing. I added my own little tidbits like, "Welcome to the jingle. We got candy canes. We've got Christmas themes you want. Big man holds the reins." That was the best I could do. I am not Weird Al Yankovic. I cannot fucking do entire parody songs. It is what it is. Don't judge me too much. I just thought it was kind of amusing and stupid. And honestly, I can't fucking stand Guns N' Roses. I don't understand the mass appeal that they have with a lot of people. It's just, they're not for me. I don't like Axl's voice. I said it. I don't like Axl Rose's voice, and that's all I'll say on the matter. Alright guys, let's just dive right into the plot of this motherfucking movie. So I just want to remind everyone that this is, as I mentioned, an animated film. It's a children/family movie. Even though I will be talking about it like it's any other random movie, it is very child-centric and I don't want to mislead anybody. So it starts off with voiceover narration about letters as it shows a bunch of letters falling down one by one into a pile. The narrator points out that people don't write many letters anymore, but they surely don't fucking forget to send that one letter a year to the big guy up north if they send any. And I'm kind of curious if kids are still doing that. I'm sure that they found like a modern alternative. I'm sure there's an app or some kind of email that you can send it to prevent having to waste postage on it. I have no doubt in my mind. He mentions that no one ever wonders how the whole thing got started, and I really hope they're being specific to the writing letters to Santa thing, because there are honestly dozens and dozens of stories about how Santa Claus came to be in different variations. I can think of probably 4 or 5 offhand that like give a backstory on Santa Claus. But the narrator says that it all started with this one letter that's in a blue envelope, and they kind of focus on this letter while all the others are off-white in color. And I've got to say, I absolutely fucking love the animation style in this movie. It's so much more intricate and detailed than traditional 2D animation. It's not computer animated, but they did do some things that I'll get into a little later in the trivia section. But I've got to say, it's also like a little goofy and eccentric too. It's very stylized. It's not like any of these people look like real people. They're all very exaggerated. It shows this cool sequence of a ton of postal workers sorting mail in back rooms. The blue letter gets handed off to a short little postal worker, and it's placed on a platter, which seems pretty impractical, both in a sense that you couldn't give one letter this much special treatment, and also it seems like it would fly off pretty easily. The man who holds the platter walks outside and down some steps, and it looks like there's a legitimate military boot camp out there, but it's just postal workers acting like they're doing boot camp stuff, but they're doing it with like packages and things like that, because this is a movie for kids and it's fucking cute, okay? That's what it is. So he hands it to this drill sergeant. He hands the letter on the platter and tells him it's for this one guy to take in particular. And the sergeant takes it over to this tent where there's a weird guy lounging and being very laid back with cucumbers on his eyes, you know, like they do in spas and things like that. The sergeant yells at the casual guy because he's supposed to be in equestrian training, apparently, like horses and whatnot. And so eventually, the sergeant says that the letter is from the postmaster general, and I guess this casual guy's name is Jesper, and he's way too easygoing for this drill sergeant. This sergeant legitimately fucking hates Jesper. That much is clear from his body language. It cuts to Jesper visiting with the postmaster, who remarks about how it's been 9 months since he used his influence to get Jesper into the Postal Academy. The drill sergeant explains that Jesper sucked ass at everything in his whole postal training, including sorting, pigeon handling, and fragile merchandise transport, and it just kind of shows him in a sequence fucking up all of this stuff. Jesper is very willing to give up, and he reveals that the postmaster is actually his father, and it seems like Jesper is just prepared to accept being a fuck-up in general. The postmaster makes it clear that despite what Jesper expects, he will not just let his son intentionally fail so that he can go back to his life of privilege and extravagance, and he tells him that he is making him a postman anyway, and he has to go to some far-off land called Smeerensburg to establish a post office and kind of get their letters flowing. He explains that he is only giving him 1 year to accomplish this task of basically going here and establishing the post office, or he will revoke all rights that he has to his wealthy life of extravagance. He says he has to stamp 6,000 letters with his own hand, and he can't cheat, bribe, or squirm his way out of it. Jesper tries to convince his father to talk about it and reconsider, but he gets booted out of the office and sent on his way. And honestly, this place seems about as remote as it could possibly be, based on like they show the postmaster pointing to the spot on the map, and it's like he just keeps scrolling all the way over to this weird random island. And so a lot of this is making us an insane amount of sense of like why they would be doing this. The stagecoach that Jesper is used to riding around in takes off without him and leaves him with this small horse and buggy to drive himself. Then it cuts back inside to the drill sergeant, who is asking the postmaster if he really thinks that it's the right thing to do with Jesper, because Smearensburg is a pretty tough task for anybody, especially this fucking softy of a son that this postmaster has. But the postmaster says Jesper needs a big wake-up call because he's a total entitled knob, and that much is true based on what we've seen. And he might one day thank his dad for this, or at least that's what the postmaster thinks. So Jesper rides off into this wilderness. He goes through all of this weather, the rain, and then eventually he's like in this frozen tundra, and he's going towards Smearensburg. And like I said, it's an island, and he encounters a man named Mogans, who assumes that clearly Jesper is just lost. And to be clear, he meets Mogans when he reaches the water because he has to get to the island by boat, and Jesper is the guy with the boat. So Jesper explains where he's headed and that he needs a boat to get there, and Mogans reacts in complete disbelief, like he can't really wrap his head around this. And then he kind of shifts to being eager to see if this young dipshit is for real, since he probably doesn't even realize what he's gotten himself into. Even though it's pretty clear that Jesper knows it's bad, it's not clear if he knows just how bad, and he probably doesn't. So it cuts to the two of them aboard Mogans' boat, and it's very cold. Jesper sees Smearensburg, and Mogans begins explaining what a dreary place it really is. They get in a wagon when they reach land, and Mogans explains that it used to be a place of colorful traditions and culture, but it's not entirely clear what the deal really is now. It's just clear that it's lost all of that excitement and spark. Like, this is legitimately the grayest and dreariest place there ever was, it seems. So everyone they see who seemingly lives there is really weird looking. Even with the weird animation style, you can tell that they're really dialing up the weirdness. And Jesper seems surprised that no one is there to receive him, which really speaks to what an entitled piece of shit Jesper is. Because, like, who the fuck would care about a postman coming to this place, especially if the place looks like this? Mogans tells him that if he goes over and rings the bell nearby, it will signal the townspeople to begin his reception. When Jesper reluctantly goes over and rings the bell, a bunch of scary people pop out of the buildings and rush toward him in a fury. And when they all collide, a giant snow cloud forms, and these people are like legitimately unhinged for some reason upon hearing this bell, and this town was dead quiet before. Jesper scampers, and the people begin fighting with one another, and it's not clear if they're trying to attack him or what is actually going on. It's just a lot of chaos. So he lands back on the wagon and tells Mogans to get him the fuck out of there, but Mogans isn't really taking him seriously. And then one of the people falls on the other end of the wagon that Jesper is on and catapults Jesper way the fuck up in the air. And when Jesper comes back down, he grabs the rope for the bell, and when it rings, everyone stops in place in dead silence and just looks at him. Suddenly, a guy comes out to see what's going on and wants to know why everyone is standing around and not doing anything. This guy's name is Mr. Ellingbo. Then a woman who is clearly voiced by Joan Cusack comes up to yell at the guy, and her character's name is Mrs. Crumb. Joan Cusack has the most unmistakable voice in the world to me. Like, I cannot think it's anybody but her when I hear her voice. She accuses Mr. Ellingbo of ringing the bell, but it's not really clear what the deal is actually with the bell, because I've never encountered such a weird custom before. Then they see that some of the kids have captured Jesper, and they realize they've been sent another postman, and everyone begins to laugh because it's just kind of ridiculous. They've clearly had a lot of postmen, and none of them have worked out, and they keep getting them. Because, I mean, look at this wiry piece of shit, too. Like, Jesper is not anybody to be respected. So Jesper tries to stop them and tells them they're only laughing because they don't know who he is, or especially who his father is, but no one really cares, and they ring the bell again, and all hell breaks loose again. But I get the distinct impression that no one cares about his dad either, because I sure as fuck wouldn't personally. Like, if I met somebody today that said that they were whatever it is, the US Postmaster General's son or daughter, I'd be like, oh, yeah, neat. All right. I mean, basically, it's like saying that, it's not really impressive to me. I'm just kind of like, who gives a shit? All the people begin throwing things at him as he scampers off and finds his way inside this building. And a woman inside there tells him to sit tight and that she'll be right out. But Jesper is very confused. He doesn't know what this place is. And he says it smells bad in there. And he just says, holy mackerel. And she explains that they're all out of mackerel and begins gutting a fish in front of him. And her name is Elva, and she's voiced by Rashida Jones. She immediately deduces that Jesper is the new mailman and that Mogens tricked him into ringing the battle bell in town. Jesper asks her what kind of town has a battle bell, which is fair, and she says, welcome to Smearensburg, and says that it is a town notorious for its feuds. They're big on grudges and bickering, and the Crumbs and the Ellingbows are pitted against each other. They're real, like, rival, I guess, families. I don't know. But Elva interrupts her explanation while she continues making fishy food of some sort to ask Jesper if he intends to buy anything. Like, she's very impatient and she clearly doesn't want to be there not making money and talking to him, wasting her time. Jesper interjects and asks if it's a school that they're actually in, and he also points out that there aren't any children there, to which Elva responds sarcastically, and Jesper notices an old picture of her on the wall where she looks very young and vibrant, and he thoughtlessly asks her what happened, which is not really a great thing to say to fucking anyone. Especially, it's basically like on par with asking someone if they're pregnant. You know what I mean? He tries to backpedal the inconsiderate comment, but Elva has already gone into attack mode and explains that she took a teaching job in a place where people don't actually send their kids to school. Like, all they give a shit about is the feuding. Like, that's all they want to do. So now she's trying to make money selling what she makes with the fish to move elsewhere, and it's slow going. She's been there a while. So Mogens returns and takes Jesper away and wants to show him his living quarters, which are pretty terrible. It's this shitty little snow-covered cabin in the middle of nowhere, and one of the town kids even pegs Jesper with a snowball as he tries to process the sight of his living quarters. He goes inside there and there's like a live chicken clucking and running around and running into shit. So Jesper takes this as like it's some kind of joke by his father, but Mogens assures him that it's where he'll be living and it's not a joke. It shows Elva putting aside savings and remarking that she's just got to hang in there as she's almost got enough savings to get the fuck out of Smearensburg. When Jesper wakes up the next morning to a startling rooster crowing, it's still remarkably cold, of course, and wintry outside, and honestly, there is just no way this domicile could retain a shred of heat. Like, there are fucking holes and gaps everywhere in the house itself. So it's like, that would just let cold in constantly. You could never get warm. And he doesn't even seemingly like start a fire from what I remember. So he goes out through the wind and snow to get to the outhouse. He has to grab his dishes that are buried in snow, but it's like there are snowbanks butted up to his house that it doesn't, there's not a lot of logic to it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But he finds a rat when he's pulling dishes out of the snowbank, and he panics and wants to give up on everything because it just freaks him out. But he knows that if he does that, he'll be left with nothing and have to live on the street based on what his dad told him. The animation style legitimately looks like pages from this cool artsy children's storybook in this. It's really fucking cool. I really like it. He gives himself a bit of a pep talk and wants to get started on delivering letters, and it's basically like he wants to do this so he can get the fuck out of there as quickly as he can. Doesn't really mean that he has to do it legitimately. He just can't like cheat. You know what I mean? Like in his mind, he's like, I can fucking lie to get these letters sent. I just can't bribe somebody to do it or, do any of the things that my father excluded. And he just wants to get the fuck out of Smearensburg. So none of the mailboxes have any letters. Like, he's going around and checking, and he starts begging random people for any letters they might have, but no one has any. And he begins harassing locals, offering mail service, but they just ignore his stupid ass. They're all just hung up on being dicks to each other. That's really what they're preoccupied with. Mogens is sitting nearby when Jesper passes, and he mentions that the people in this town really don't have much need for mail because they don't really have much to say to each other than the dick shit that they say to one another already. Suddenly, Jesper is hit by a drawing of a nearby house, and he looks over to the child in the window who is asking for his drawing back. And at least it's like, I wasn't sure at first if this was a he or a she. It's like one of those scenarios where the kid is too young and the animation style doesn't like give it away, and the hair is a little longer than it needs to be and things like that. So I was a little confused, and I had to like confirm that it was actually a boy. Like, I got so far into note taking thinking this was a girl and had to go back and correct all of my notes to make sure that I said that it was a he. So it is definitely a boy. So Jesper suggests that he can't just hand the letter or the drawing back to the boy, but if the child paid for postage, he could deliver it to his mailbox. The kid just wants Jesper to put the letter in the fucking mailbox without actually officially mailing it, but of course, Jesper wants him to send it officially so he can chip away at his quota. Suddenly, this kid's super fucking creepy dad shows up outside with a pack of dogs, and the boy begins innocently explaining to the dad what Jesper was doing, not knowing that it was a pretty douchey thing that he was doing. But Jesper tries to backtrack and claim the child is lying, and he attempts to scurry away, but the father snaps his fingers to send the dogs chasing after him. Jesper eventually gets back home that night, and he's frustrated, and he pretends like the experience is not going to kill his spirit thus far, as he crosses off failed delivery locations on his map of Smearensburg. And so it's like, honestly, it just seems like as good a time as any to throw in the towel. Like, I would certainly fucking give up if this was the kind of place it was. He assures himself it will only take a couple more weeks of patience to get the ball rolling, which is aggressively delusional, but it cuts outside and shows the passage of much more time than that, as the moon and sun continuously just cycle in rapid succession. It's like a time lapse of the days passing, and it just goes really quick. After that passage of time is over, Jesper lays lifelessly on his desk, and Mogens stops by to check on him, but he's really just there to mess with him. And Jesper pushes up the corner of his map and asks Mogens what's in that corner of the map. Like, is there any houses there? What's going on with that? And Mogens says that it's the woodsman's cabin, and Jesper asks if someone lives there, and Mogens very facetiously says that Jesper should head up there because the woodsman loves visitors. He also says that he's very nice, so clearly he's not very nice and not very welcoming, but Jesper is just too desperate to actually realize what Mogens' tone is conveying here. So Jesper makes his way up toward the old cabin through a bunch of winter wilderness and haze, and he approaches the door. He looks in through the window on the front door, but he can't see anything, so he lets himself in and announces himself, but no one acknowledges him. He lights up a lantern and sees a bunch of handmade toys displayed on the shelves in this dark room in this cabin. And I'm not like clairvoyant or anything, but I'm willing to bet that this is actually Klaus's house based on empirical wisdom. I just can't imagine thinking any of this is a good idea, even as a last-ditch effort to mail some letters. Like, he did cross off like every house or every location on his Smearensburg map, but this is insane what he's doing. Suddenly, as Jesper looks around, he is confronted by a dark figure who comes to the front door. He tries to conceal his presence, and he freaks the fuck out and quickly scampers away. He struggles to get as far away as he can and hops in his buggy, I'm sorry, I said that weird. And then the mysterious man just casually walks out into the snow, but he isn't really chasing him, or at least not with enough enthusiasm to call it chasing. It's giving pretty strong Terminator vibes, in my opinion, but without the direct chasing. Like, he's just kind of walking. It's like he's just going in the same direction, basically. One of Jesper's letters flutter up in the sky and lands in front of the mystery man, who is definitely Klaus, by the way. The letter is the one with the picture of the house that the boy drew, whose father chased Jesper off. As Klaus looks at the sad picture of the child in the house, he sees the boy in the barred window, and it's pretty clear something's gonna happen, we just don't know what yet. Jesper gets held up for a minute, then declares that he is better off alive in the gutter than hacked into pieces by some crazy person, and he gets back in his buggy and takes off. But Klaus finally tracks him down and asks him where the house in the picture is. But there is virtually no world where Klaus could have gotten there that fast without teleportation abilities. Klaus literally gets ahead of Jesper and stops him and is standing in front of his path at this point. So Jesper tries to give him directions to the house, but Klaus just picks Jesper up and takes him with him. Klaus identifies him as a postman, so that's nice. So they come up to an area that kind of looks like a cemetery with a big gate, but instead of gravestones, there are a bunch of bear traps laid outside. But I guess this is actually that kid's house from the drawing, and the kid from the beginning, like the kid that drew the drawing. The nighttime setting really fucking threw me off on that. I had no fucking idea where this was supposed to be. And they're trying to deliver some kind of package here, and he really just wants, Jesper, really wants to stuff it in the mailbox and just get the fuck on his way, but clearly Klaus isn't allowing that. Jesper expresses his reluctance to go inside of this mystery house, but Klaus just bends open the bars on the gate and pushes Jesper through. Suddenly, a bunch of those same mean dogs from earlier come charging toward Jesper, and he's just got nowhere to fucking run right now. So he makes his way inside the basement of the dark house, but can't find a way out as there are no doors that aren't actually locked. And he hears the father ask who's there, and the father pulls back a fucking gun hammer. Suddenly, Klaus is coming inside, and the dogs flee. Jesper drops the package at some point inside and tries to talk, but Klaus just covers his fucking mouth so he can't say anything and stops him from making noise. They look inside the window at this sad little boy who looks like he's just inside drawing to pass the time. And Jesper had left the package right there by the boy, and the boy looks at it and he opens it up. I can't really be sure how, based on what I've seen, but somehow they got one of Klaus's toys to the boy with this package. It's a wind-up frog, and he is just so delighted by it as he goes out to play with it, like he's just running around chasing it, and it's bouncing around. Klaus watches how happy the boy gets as he chases the toy around the room, and Jesper just sneaks away while he's distracted. Suddenly, the boy looks up and sees Klaus in the window, but when he goes to look closer in the window, Klaus just vanishes from sight. The next morning, 3 kids come to Jesper's door asking to mail letters to Klaus because their cousin said Klaus would make them toys if they sent letters. They all bring a penny for each of their letters. Of course, Jesper is so confused by this and doesn't really know what to do, but he naturally wants to deliver their mail and chip away at his goal. He snaps into action and has these kids start helping him kind of get things moving with the post office stuff. He's being like a shady drug dealer from an after-school special as he asks a bunch of kids from the shadows if they're interested in getting toys. That is legitimately, I am not exaggerating, these are the deliberate vibes that they are giving with the way he's proposing these toys to kids. He goes through and explains to these large groups of kids that they can send letters to Klaus to request gifts and how they just have to remember their penny for postage, and that's all. During this sequence, it's playing the song How Do You Like Me Now by The Heavy, and although I like that song, it's an odd and somewhat jarring choice for the first piece of music in an animated Christmas movie, you know? It shows him gathering all of these letters the kids have made, and he wants to ensure the letters are exceptionally sad, like the first one, and of course, it makes him look like a big piece of shit. Like he's basically just trying to like beef up the sympathy for these kids. He's just playing up this sadness so fucking falsely, and he gathers the letters in his wagon. And I'm going to be honest with you, I can't tell what the difference is between a buggy, a wagon, and a carriage is. So I'm basically just going to be using the terms interchangeably, but I want to say it's mostly a wagon probably. So Jesper finds Klaus out chopping wood, and he stops him and very awkwardly tries to explain to him that more children have written letters with sad stories and they want toys. Klaus is not particularly receptive as he keeps working, but it turns out he's just wanting to hang bird feeders in silence. Then Klaus tells him simply to go away. Like, just go the fuck away, dude. Jesper offers to deliver the toys for free, and tries to convince him because of the joy that it will bring if Klaus does this. And Klaus goes into a trance as Jesper lists kids and their different issues. Klaus tells him that they'll do their thing again that night, but he has to go with him. Like, Jesper has to come along. So Jesper wants Klaus to just give him the toys, but Klaus doesn't like that idea and wants to do it at night together and not just leave it to Jesper to handle it. So it cuts to the kids. They're in town playing, and it's that original boy playing with the frog, and he starts playing with a random girl. And this boy's dad is shocked that he has a toy and was also playing with an Ellingbow girl. Huge deal, obviously, with this rivalry. The townspeople are outraged that the boy doesn't even understand what was wrong about doing that. Like, they bring him to wherever they gather inside, and they're like grilling him about it. And they basically recap the whole sordid history with the Ellingbows and the Crumbs. They lay the guilt on this kid pretty fucking thick for fraternizing with this girl. And they also want to know where the fuck he got the toy, but it doesn't show how he actually responds to this question. I still was not sure that this was a boy until they finally verbalized it, and I was so pissed because this was, like, think about the first time I mentioned this kid. I was calling him a girl in my notes this whole time because I was sure that this was a girl, and then it turned out he was a boy. So I'm sure it means nothing now to all of you people that I had to go back and revise my notes, but it was really awful for me and I wanted to share. But anywho, it seems that there's a real Capulets and Montagues thing going on in this town, and that is the most Shakespearean I am willing to ever get. But it's also not clear how they even function and survive as a society with this feud seemingly taking up all of their time and priorities. That night, Jesper tries to prepare for his big trip with Klaus. He wakes up the next day to more kids with letters wanting toys. There's this legitimate swarm of these greedy fucking kids. This one strange little girl who is from a different place and speaks a different language wants in on the toys but doesn't have a letter. The other kids just say that she's speaking a language called Sami, and Jesper hilariously asks, as this girl's talking in another language, he asks what's wrong with her mouth. And I don't know, it's just a really amusing reaction to a different language. Like, has he never heard somebody speak another language? So he dismisses her because she can't really do much for him because she doesn't have a letter. Jesper makes it clear that they must have letters, and one kid points out that they don't even know how to write. So he doesn't really act like he cares initially, but then he tells them he has a suggestion and it cuts. And suddenly Alva angrily confronts Jesper later because the kids have started going to school because they want to learn to write so they can send these letters and get toys. She's mad that he's screwing up her plans to get the fuck out of there, and she reveals that she's been there for 5 years and she just wants to get the fuck out. Even though he points out that this is the whole point of teaching. Like, she's still frustrated, but he does point out to her, like, hey, isn't this why you originally wanted to come here, is to teach kids? Eventually, Jesper overhears kids talking about Klaus and what he can do, and there's some major grassroots lore going on around about Klaus and what he's capable of. And there are a lot of stories about Klaus that are formed from badly perceived moments by eyewitnesses. Like, they saw part of something that happened and formed their own theory and then just passed it off as fact to the other kids. They claim that he can go down any chimney despite his size. They say he'll fill their socks with toys if they leave them hanging on the mantle. And they also say that he likes cookies and that kids should leave cookies out for Klaus. When Jesper goes down a chimney to deliver a kid's gift, he realizes that it's the same dickhead kid who hit him with the snowball early on when he first saw his cabin. He opts to not leave the toy for the kid, but instead drops a lump of coal in one of the socks, and you're like, oh, so that's how that all got started. But these kids are going nuts talking about Klaus, and clearly most of what they think is the work of Klaus is actually being done by Jesper, and Jesper kind of resents Klaus for this, even though it's not really Klaus's fault. Like, he didn't perpetuate any of this on purpose. So it cuts to the classroom where Alva is hosting a bunch of students, and she's just cutting up fish in front of them and not really even trying to teach them, and they all desperately want to learn. She eventually has to get them them to agree to the notion that if she teaches them at least one thing, that they will all fucking leave. Alva could not have more disdain for this process as each of the kids write their names on the chalkboard, but she finally realizes that the kids really do want to learn and that they actually enjoy what they're doing. Like, it excites them and makes them happy. And she has to begrudgingly dip into her savings to further support her teaching. And it cuts to Jesper and Klaus hauling presents through the snow using a single reindeer. Klaus realizes that they have way too big of a load of presents that they're hauling, and Klaus just goes to start removing a few bags to lighten their load, but Jesper stops him. Jesper, in this moment, almost lets slip his ulterior motive when he tells Klaus that if they ship fewer presents, that will mean fewer letters, but he quickly course corrects on that sentiment because, he just says that it will mean more heartbroken kids in Smearensburg because obviously, like, Klaus is not going to understand why the fuck that's a big deal that there are fewer letters because of what he's doing. Then it cuts to this pretty zany sequence where Jesper is trying to wrangle another reindeer to help with hauling the load, and he is having a hell of a time. But as Jesper struggles pretty aggressively, Klaus eventually just casually places food in a line on the ground to draw the reindeer in. He hooks several more to the wagon and does so with pretty minimal effort, honestly. When Jesper hops in and shakes the reins, they take off rapidly. And as the two of them take off, they legitimately act like they're having a good time until they remember that they are men, and movies say that they're not allowed to visibly enjoy things for whatever reason. Even though I wouldn't hide the fun around guys if I was having it, like I wouldn't give a shit if I was having a good time. The next day, that one mean kid starts to hassle Jesper about not getting any presents and only getting coal, but Jesper basically just says that assholes don't get presents from Klaus, and rather than accepting this at face value, the kid angrily suggests that someone must have ratted him out to Klaus, which implies heavily that he thinks it was Jesper. But Jesper, who is already showing a lot of growth, asserts that Klaus just fucking knows when kids are being dicks. He explains that Klaus has a naughty list, and he's sure none of the kids want to be on it. I was thinking about this because it kind of sucks for those kids that don't know any better and learn the bad behavior from their parents, that they're getting screwed on the toys, but I digress. So it cuts to this really nice sequence where all the kids are writing letters and telling Klaus about nice shit that they've been doing, and convinces it, like, just basically they've been convinced to be good so that they can please Klaus. It shows them helping people, shoveling snow, helping the injured. All of the adults are so perplexed by the behavior, and they don't know why the kids are all being so nice, but the kids are all so eager to do these nice things, and you may be thinking, Brandon, wouldn't it be better if they just wanted to be nice without the promise of a reward? And the answer is, of course, yes, but also this is better than them just being dicks all the time to everyone or being completely apathetic about everything. It's a nice little montage, and it shows how much nicer everyone in town is getting. Even like the adults are demonstrating residual kindness because of the kids' kindness, and it's kind of cool. The kids talk about how much they love school and love Alva. These kids are all really going apeshit with the being nice thing, and the adults, like I said, are even doing nice shit in turn. And it also shows that Jesper has gotten closer to his goal, as he's now over 3,000 letters, which is more than half of his goal of 6,000. But of course, no happy tale is complete without a villainous plot, and so it shows that two of the older townsfolk, Mr. Ellingboe and Mrs. Crumb, are expressing their displeasure with all this camaraderie and kindness. The two of them want the town to return to their feuding ways for whatever reason, but it's not really well established why they're so hellbent on that. Like, it's just tradition, and that's why. One night, Jesper and Klaus are riding in the wagon, and Jesper is talking about how much better things have gotten in town. Klaus says the great line, "One selfless act always sparks another." Jesper makes a comment about how the kids are just in it for the toys, basically, and he doesn't know what the adults are in it for. But Klaus asks Jesper what's in it for him, and Jesper stammers and hesitates a bit, and then he spots Mr. Ellingboe and Mrs. Crumb separately trying to tip logs onto the trail to sabotage their toy delivery in the middle of the fucking night. And the two villains argue because there was no collusion in their plans. Like, they didn't get together and say, hey, we need to work together to sabotage this. They just happen to both decide to be assholes at the same time and place in the same way, which I think is kind of nice in its own little way, you know? But as they squabble, it seems like the villains both fail in their ambush. Even though, like, Klaus and Jesper evade the falling logs, they lose their wheels and launch off a ledge. And a kid looks out his window and sees them, and they, like, legitimately fly by with the reindeer. And this kid believes that they are actually flying, even though they're really just falling with style. Jesper explains this rumor to Klaus, who finds it very amusing and laughs very hard about it, and Jesper delights in hearing what Klaus's laugh actually sounds like. Klaus mentions that they are loading up the last of the toys, and that Jesper must be relieved to have no more night shifts to do. Obviously, it's a little bittersweet in multiple ways for Jesper. Like, he doesn't want a night shift of delivering toys, and he has kind of enjoyed his time. It's kind of like a toss-up for him. The next day, the Sami-speaking child comes, and Jesper desperately explains that they're out of toys, and that means no more letters. Jesper is pretty upset because he's running out of time and it's almost Christmas, but it makes him realize he could use Christmas in some way to push for more gifts and get more letters, which is always a great plan to, like, exploit Christmas in some way. So one night, Mrs. Crumb and Mr. Ellingbo meet by a bonfire and agree they must reach a truce temporarily to defeat their common enemy together, and they all notice how much their angry groups have thinned out through the cheerful brainwashing by Jesper and Klaus. They agree they will put aside their feud temporarily to put things back to how they were, and it shows Klaus, and he seems pretty troubled, walking up to a building in the woods, and he sees a mystery figure, and then it turns out that it's Jesper who proposes the idea to Klaus that he make more toys in time for Christmas, and it even shows him, like, basically Jesper has this workshop all set up for him to use, and Jesper explains how kids could just wake up on Christmas and open toys in the morning, and it'd be really cool, but Klaus says he doesn't make toys anymore, and it's like he's just not on board with this whole idea. Jesper is not receptive to this declaration because obviously he wants the fucking letters. At one point, despite Klaus's protests, Jesper pulls back a sheet to reveal a painting or carving of some sort of Klaus. It's kind of tough with the animation style to tell what it's supposed to be. And Klaus is in this artwork with a woman, and Jesper asks what it is, and despite his attempts to apologize for the intrusion, Klaus tells him to get the fuck out. Later on, the Sami kid comes to see Jesper, and Jesper laments the situation he's in because he doesn't... Is it laments the situation or laments about the situation? I don't fucking know. You know what I mean. He's very sad about it because he doesn't want to be stuck there, but he realizes even though he's important at home, he's nobody there and just feels bad for what happened with Klaus the night before. He takes the child to Alva's place to see if she can make sense of what the kid's saying, and Alva welcomes them in reluctantly, and honestly, it's very sweet and wholesome watching them all together as Alva's trying to, like, decipher what's being said by this kid. It shows Klaus looking at what I guess is a drawing by one of the children, and he looks around at his workshop, and he's just very sad, of course, and it's clear he has some kind of tragic backstory, copyright 2019, that keeps him the way he is. But he and Jesper sit together doing woodworking eventually. It's like they're not really on the outs with each other. It's just a little awkward. Suddenly, Klaus and Jesper are rushing off into the night, and they're delivering more toys to this family of the foreign Sami-speaking child. The whole family rejoices at the sight of what they made for the kid, and as Jesper and Klaus watch, they react with just complete joy. Mrs. Crumb and Mr. Ellingbo see what's going on after going to where Jesper is tracking his letters. Like, they go inside the post office when he's not there and are fucking furious, and they start hatching a plan. Jesper talks to Klaus about how nice it was giving the toys to the family. Klaus tells the story of his wife Lydia. basically it's like obviously there's the story behind this artwork that Jesper saw with Klaus and this woman. So it's his wife Lydia. He explains that he built a house there for the two of them to live in, and before long they wanted to have children. So Klaus started making toys for the children to play with, and he kept making them, and it basically like turns out the kids weren't coming. It was like she couldn't have kids or something. Not really clear. Didn't really get into that in this children's movie, believe it or not. So he said they felt so lost and kept making it's just basically like Lydia ended up getting sick and eventually passed away after a while, and Klaus just felt so sad, and it was lost out there. Like he just kept making birdhouses because he knew Lydia loved birds. And then when Jesper showed up that one day, it brought him such joy to give those kids toys. Klaus declares that he's ready to go through with Jesper's Christmas plan, and he says that if it works out, they could even expand the following year and go to more places or do more or whatever. Naturally, this worries Jesper because his plan was to reach his goal and dip the fuck out. Jesper finds Alva cheerfully teaching one day, and she has spruced the fuck out of her classroom. He realizes she must have used her savings to do it, and he kind of like gives her a hard time about it, and she says that no one would be crazy enough to want to leave Smearensburg now since it's become such a nice place. She takes him around the town to just show him all the happy folks about and how much nicer it is. Suddenly, the next day, the Sami girl arrives at the post office with her tribe, and the group is so delighted by the toy that they brought, they decide to renovate the post office to return the favor to Jesper, and it cuts to the bad guys. And I guess their plan is to write as many pointless letters as they can just to have them mailed so that they can reach a certain number. That way, Jesper will reach his goal faster and will ultimately leave and let them to return to what they were before. But they also kind of want to expose this whole plan by Jesper. Jesper sees the thriving, updated post office and debates about what to do and if he should actually stay in Smearensburg. And to be fair, it does seem like a logical choice at this point for him to stay. They fit Klaus with this new red and white outfit that is very traditional Santa, and he looks pretty spiffy. Suddenly, the postmaster shows up, Jesper's dad from the beginning. He says he couldn't believe that there had been 14,000 letters sent out of Smearensburg, and he had to come see it for himself. Jesper says that can't be right because he just looked at the numbers and he wasn't even to his 6,000 letter goal yet. But Mrs. Crumb chimes in out of nowhere from behind the postmaster and assures him it's right, and they told the postmaster all about it. The postmaster is more than ready to take Jesper home with him, but Jesper is pretty set on staying at this point, it seems. Klaus and Alva and the others have come outside at this point as the bad guys are going through all of what Jesper did and all of the deception and all that. Basically just any of the bad stuff that he was doing to get to this goal, no matter how many good things might have counteracted it. They're all very upset at Jesper, but it seems like the dad doesn't really get that it's being seen as bad by anyone. It's like he's really not reading the room at all. Jesper tries to apologize, and they all assume the worst of his intentions from the very beginning, and Jesper ends up in the carriage riding back with his father, and the bad guys say that's one down, one to go, referring to Klaus. Jesper is very upset as they approach Mogens at the ferry, who actually points out to the dad that Jesper is the first postman who seems sadder leaving than he did when he was arriving. And as they appear to be floating away, the Sami child looks out to the boat and calls out to say goodbye, but Jesper reveals that he stayed, like he's just sitting at the dock, not in the boat, and he just says that his father was really proud of what he'd done, and he had told his father he wanted to stay. But he eventually realizes he's got to get back to protect Klaus from the bad guys. Klaus is hoisting a big bag of toys in the town square, and the bad guys come to confront them and intend to destroy all of the toys. Klaus stops Alva from going at them and just insists that they can do whatever they want to the toys as long as no one gets hurt. So suddenly Jesper swoops in and cuts the bag loose, and it falls into the back of Klaus's sleigh, and they begin sliding down this huge snow hill with this giant bag of toys. Jesper gets a pretty hefty guilt trip from Klaus, as Klaus just sits there and lets disaster ensue. But Jesper wants to save the toys, and the bad guys have climbed on the bag while the sleigh is going down the hill. And eventually, they actually get knocked off at a cave entrance. And eventually, the toys are starting to get lost from the bag. Klaus makes a desperate attempt to finally stop the sleigh, and it stops on the edge of a cliff. And when Jesper thinks the toys are safe, Mrs. Crumb cuts open the bag and sends the toys just dropping off the cliff, like no chance of saving them. So when she does this, the bad guys are all really fucking smug and satisfied about their defeat, and they're distracted by something. And it seems that the two kids, or their son and daughter from the beginning, who were from the rival families that sparked such outrage by being seen playing together, have fallen in love, and the two families just storm off in outrage. And it's then revealed that the bad guys only destroyed a decoy bag of toys that were not the real toys, because basically Alva and Klaus thought ahead of like, oh, clearly this is what, we've got to be careful with these toys, which is pretty fucking smart if you ask me. Alva comes up and begins to explain that she heard the kids in school talking about what their parents were planning. So basically Jesper came back and made everything a hell of a lot harder than it really had to be. And it cuts to all the kids waking up on Christmas, and they're delighted to open their toys. The two rival kids actually end up getting married, I guess, and so did Jesper and Alva. Eventually, they got more and more letters and had to expand, and they only do it on Christmas Eve night every year. And on the 12th year of delivering toys, Klaus looks up at the sun, like he's just out in the woods near where his cabin is. And he looks over the hills through his birdhouses and just says, "I'm coming, love." And he vanishes without any warning. And Jesper looks everywhere for him and can't find him. And Klaus didn't even say goodbye, so Jesper's a little heartbroken. Jesper and Alva ended up having two kids, but basically everyone just kept following the original rituals of the toy deliveries that were creating all of that lore. And Jesper explains that he stopped trying to make sense of it anymore, but magically somehow the presents just kept coming, and now once a year he gets to see his friend, and he can't really explain how it's happening, and it just does. And we roll credits. Alright, so trivia for this movie. The fictional town of Smeerensburg was based on Smeerenburg, an actual town that existed in Norway. It used to be a prosperous whaling post during the 17th century. When the animators were designing Smeerensburg, they used a lot of sharp angles and triangles to show that the environment wasn't really friendly or comfortable. By contrast, Klaus's cabin and barn were made to look very sturdy and strong, much like Klaus himself. Director Sergio Pablos had wanted to do a traditionally animated feature film, but he wanted to see how the animation would have evolved without the switch to computer-generated animation. So the studio used CGI lighting techniques with hand-drawn animation to create a unique animation style for the story. This is the first traditionally hand-drawn animated movie to make use of volumetric lighting and texturing to give it a more 3D-like look. Nita Margrethe Laba, who voiced the Sami girl Margu, did not speak any English. Sergio Pablos traveled all the way to Tromsø, Norway, where she lives, and did her whole recording session through translation and mimicry. It was originally planned for the Sami people to speak English, but this was later changed, and they spoke only their native language in the movie. The film was shopped around to various studios who perceived it as too risky from April 2015 until Netflix acquired the rights in November of 2017. When the movie was first set in storyboards, the reindeer were drawn eating berries, but through research, the team quickly learned that berries are actually poisonous to reindeer, so it was changed to the reindeer eating clumps of moss, which is what real reindeer usually eat. Jason Schwartzman ad-libbed a lot of his lines. Director Sergio Pablos reckons only about 40% of his dialogue in the final film is scripted. In development, this film was in development for nearly 10 years, so this was kind of a labor of love, and honestly, it shows through. And by the way, this is not an IMDb nugget. This is just my own little factoid. Because I'm an idiot and didn't do enough research first, when I searched this movie on Amazon hoping to just buy a copy of it, even though it's only available on Netflix, there was a graphic novel series of the same name that was published just a few years before this movie premiered. So naturally, I just assumed that because it was also a Santa Claus origin story with the exact same name, that the movie was based on this book, but I was very wrong about that. However, the graphic novel, although like different, I mean, a lot of similarity to be clear, but it was also very good. At least the first collection was. I started on the second collection, but I just kind of put that on hiatus for the time being because honestly, I just wanted to get this episode recorded. So on to info and ratings. Opening weekend, Netflix reported that the film was viewed by nearly 30 million people in its first month on the platform, which I guess in Netflix terms means it was a success. Worldwide gross, there is no gross listed anywhere because this movie was only briefly released theatrically on a limited basis to qualify for the Oscars. IMDb rating 8.2, Letterboxd rating 4.2, Rotten Tomato Critics score 95%, Rotten Tomato Audience score 96%. Personal rating 5 out of 5 stars. Praise for this movie. I love the animation style so much. It's fucking beautiful. The story is fantastic and really sparked some fucking Christmas wonder in me, and it's pretty rare that that happens. Usually it's just like, oh, it's a Christmas movie, whatever. These weird origin stories should never work, but this was so well done, and it was so fucking well written. I honestly kind of just expected it to just be blah, you know? For criticism, I'm legitimately pissed at myself for not just watching this movie normally first without taking notes because I had to start it over midway through to make sure I caught everything because this was my first time ever watching it. But honestly, I'm really fucking glad I watched it. I would legitimately recommend this movie to fucking anybody. I don't give a shit. All right, everyone. Thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day. Bye now.
I'm here to welcome you to Brandon and Random Reviews. No method when I choose. It's Brandon and Random Reviews. What you hoped you would see. He's half blind with hats tied, with all the dates of release.